Little bag of chips?
No, I like not to do it with y'all.
Don't,
Have a hard
let's
time
not
with
start
that.
with the chips, folks.
So I'll just wait till I go home.
How's Ashley?
Good.
I didn't get my Arby's either, so be a quick meeting. Hi.
Just so empty. Maybe just talk every week.
The entire football team, 2 buses came over the Shimwell's visitation. That's strong.
Did you go?
I went to the visitation, but not the funeral.
I was going to ask, but
They were live streaming the funeral, and I didn't think I could.
I watched enough there to be able to know I couldn't be there.
Christy had a hard time just keeping it together in the line.
Mhm.
Think everybody's coming this year? Alrighty,
More than I thought would be here. Wasn't expecting.
alrighty, it's 6:30 PM. Time to start the Clark County Board of Education Working Budget Meeting, September 25th, 2018. I'd like to welcome everyone who's in attendance, and if you all would please join me by rising, have a moment of silence, and of course we'll still keep the Shimwell family in our thoughts. The terrible tragedy that they went through, but the incredible strength that they've shown through this process. And if you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Motion to adopt the agenda by Mr. Peridot,
Second.
second by Mrs. Hicks. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes 4-0. I'd like to note that I received
Sorry, it's me. Okay.
an email from Dr. Kudak midday today saying that he had a curriculum meeting tonight that he must attend, and that therefore he would not be able to attend our budget meeting. And he passed along some other information about his thoughts on the meeting.
I'll move that we excuse Dr. Kudak for the meeting.
Motion to excuse Dr. Kudak by Mrs. Hicks,
Second.
second by Mr. Peridot. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. That motion, any opposed? That motion passes 4-0. Dr. Kudak is excused. All righty, public comments.
No public here.
No public comments? I'll move on to item number 2, consider adoption of the 2018-2019 working budget. Mrs. Rebecca Moore from OVEC and Mrs. Alicia Ellis from our staff.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So you have received a PowerPoint presentation outlining the working budget. You've received also a summary and a detail of the Munis printout. How would you like to proceed tonight? Would you like to walk through everything, start with questions?
You know, I guess from my standpoint, since this is our third pass at the budget, and you did give a very detailed slideshow, PowerPoint presentation for us to look at, it seemed like it might make sense, instead of going through that entire presentation, to just simply open it up to questions and maybe have a little back and forth about things that might need a little bit more clarification. Is that okay with you all?
That's great.
Okay.
On slide number 2, Can you clarify if total budget is still the KDE definition, or has it changed since last year or the year before?
Well, a total, but contingency is of Fund 1 and Fund 51, so I can
Okay.
correct that language. It's your budget at the end of Fund 1 without contingency in it, and then Fund 51, those two amounts together, that's how you calculate your percentage.
I thought that was the case. but I
Yes,
wasn't
ma'am.
sure.
I can correct that language for future. So the requirement is 2%, and as you've gone through these slides, you'll see that based on that, our percentage is 17.7% with this budget of where contingency stands right now. I'd like to point out, with Mr. Heisel's review, and again, further review of myself looking at the budget, I transposed when I was making a budget entry. We had, based on a 5-year average of other accounts in Fund 1, we were gonna put in a $20,000 budget for national board certification that we get reimbursed for that, and I fat fingered those numbers and accidentally stuck it in the SEEK budget. So you'll see the SEEK should be 17,566,067, so it's stated correctly in the PowerPoint, but when you look at the Munis report, that 20,000 got put in the SEEK budget instead of the national board budget, so that needs to be corrected before submitting to the state. But the bottom number is still correct. It's just those two accounts, the 20,000 got flipped. So I apologize for that. When you're entering those budget entries, all the lines kind of start running together. Are there any questions as we proceed through, or?
I try to, of course, it's a challenging process to go through and where the starting point is, and there's a myriad of different adjustments and then department moves. I took the information you gave us at the budget meeting we had back in the budget committee meeting.
Yes.
And tried to work my way through that. The thing that really seemed to stand out the most is in digging down into supplies, it seemed like there was, even when you take into account the encumbrances from last year and where schools moved items forward from last year to be able to, they didn't spend that money last year to move it to this year. It seemed like there was a lot more money that was going to Baker for technology items. Was that an intentional change in the last couple months?
They have purchased technology, and we originally budget technology. The way the coding works is that if it's a purchase of over $5,000, you put it in a fixed asset code, which is a 700 equipment series code. And so when we sat down back in October at the draft budget level with all the schools, that's the number they're used to using is 0734 in the 700 series for any technology they purchase. Well, it's come down from KDE that we no longer have to physically tag and track computers in our fixed asset module. We still have to tag them and track them for purposes of knowing that we have the items, but we don't have to depreciate those items anymore. So we don't have to tag them in our capital asset system. And that's the 0700 series, is the capital asset fixed assets. So now when they're buying their computers and stuff, we're transferring that money to 0651, which is other technology equipment that KDE has now deemed that's where they want technology purchased from. So you're probably going to see a lot of moves of their money out of that 07 into the 0610 to buy technology. And Baker just did a purchase, so they've moved their money to make that purchase.
That all the two pieces of the puzzle fit together, because
Okay.
on the other hand, we had property
Yes,
purchases were
property
going
go
down like
down.
about $80,000, so.
So this year, you'll probably
Okay.
see a lot of the budget move from 7 to 6, the property to the supplies, because of that technology change. Whereas when we start the draft budget for next year, we'll put it in the 0651 series.
Okay.
So that's an object code changing from KDE.
And speaking of object codes, and I'm probably going to botch up my reference on this, so I'll try to simplify it to a way that I can understand.
Okay.
The different organizations, I guess we'll call it the org code.
Correct.
Part of it is like 2.6 is Baker and 3.0 Is that also Baker?
No, 030 is GRC,
Ah, okay.
026
Sorry
is
about that.
Baker. Each school has their own 3-digit
That I had that wrong. So that's the org code.
Yes, sir.
And where you have like the higher level view in the expenses, for example,
The functions,
yeah, so you have the 1,000 is instruction and 2,100 is student support. And I won't drag this on too long. How do I refer to those, like the 1,000, 2,100 codes? What are they called in general?
so typically your instruction is gonna be what we call our SBDM allocation monies. That's our instructional money. So it would be the first 3-digit, whatever school, and then 1118, which is instructional. You've got counselors in there. The instructional code has a lot of organizational codes in it.
I really meant higher up.
Oh,
So
okay.
when I see instructions is 1,000 and student support is 2,100 and instructional support is 2,200, what is that number?
That's called a function code.
So that's the
Sorry.
function code.
That's the function code.
And I won't drag this on too long, don't worry. And then below that, where you then have salaries and employee benefits and on
Those are your
behalf.
object codes. So that's rolling every single object code up into, so all of your different salary codes, the 0110, 0112, 0130, which is indicative, certified, classified, that's all rolled up into the 0100, stating all salaries and all benefits and so on.
And then 026 Baker and 030 GRC, that's the org code.
Yes, so the first 3 digits of any of those 7-digit codes is the location of which school, or you'll see 000 is district-wide, 001 is central office, and then each location has a code that was assigned by KDE.
And then at that budget meeting, you made the statement that money can be moved between, and I'm probably using this wrong, departments, but not between types. So now that I've learned these terms, how can money be moved after we pass
Right, so
this budget?
departments is kind of coincide with organizational code, like that's a department or org code per se. So GRC can move, they have, their allocation money goes into an instructional code, which is those first 3 digits, 030, 1118, which is their instructional money, and then also their library, which ends in a 1059. So they can move money between those accounts because that's considered their allocation money that the SBDM councils have control of. So all of their staff is paid out of that for instructional, all their teaching staff, and librarians. Those 2 codes can intermingle. Otherwise, they pretty much stay within that specific organizational code. So like I have
You
a,
can move money, is that what you're talking about?
Now, I'm just trying to figure
Oh,
out
money.
how money can be moved, because
Yes.
then we also, I was trying to understand one of these questions, we certified to KD, how it fit together.
fit together.
Not
And so
fitted,
those
sorry.
codes are all within that instruction function. So you'll see movement within a function. So when you look at that 1000 series instruction, you might see money moving between the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 area. You'll see money moving between all that. But you most likely are never going to see that bottom line change unless you've put money into it from contingency. Does that?
And in terms of money from, so I guess you could move money from
You can
money could
move
move
between
from functions.
functions.
Because the organizations below that wanted to move money between functions.
Yes, but it would have to be a department, like, I'm giving you money. Most likely, no one's gonna give up their budget to another department. So you're not gonna see the movement between functions in the
Okay.
majority of cases.
Then when we said in item 16, the local school district will submit an amendment prior to opening an object code series or to purchase equipment that costs $5,000 or more.
So on the grants. What does that mean? On the grants, we have, in that GMAP system, we have a budget that we have to submit to KDE on every single grant that we have. And they have to approve that grant and its spending. So at any point in time that whoever is over that grant chooses to change how they were spending, they have to submit an amendment in GMAP prior to me doing any kind of amendment in Munis and get it approved by their consultant at KDE.
this certification was just for grants only?
Just for
Oh,
grants.
okay.
That's
Well,
just
that-
for our
that-
grants. That's not our Fund One
All of the
movement.
assurances
Okay.
were just for grants.
Okay.
That's for grants. Those assurances are for grants,
That
for all federal grants in GMAP.
I clarified that.
And if you flip, there is a slide in the PowerPoint for Fund Two, and it lists by local, state, and federal. So all of those grants listed under federal are the ones that those assurances apply to. So if you'll, I'm not sure what number slide it is. Just keep flipping down until you find Fund Two.
It's about halfway through the
Yeah.
presentation.
Right there. So
There you go.
So it starts with local grants, which those are things we get from community members here in Clark County, most likely. And then you have state grants that come directly. Most, even state grants and federal grants are through KDE, but the difference is the funding source. So you have the state funding source, and then you have the KDE federal funding sources that KDE administers. They get the bulk of the money and then pass it out to the schools. But if you'll flip to the next slide, that's our federal funding. So that's what the assurances apply to, is anything that's considered a federal grant and in GMAP.
And the last thing I could think of is, I got copied on a refund check. I didn't get the refund check that you all did. For having to do with unemployment fund, it's $33,000 or something like that. Do they think that trend might continue, or do you think that was a one-time?
We have actually,
Refund.
several years in a row now, gotten a refund check from KSBA. So we quarterly fill out a report that they send us based on our payroll that we've paid, and I submit a check to them quarterly for what we think our unemployment is going to be, and then they do an audit at the end of the year, and I guess the last 2 years I've been here, we've gotten a check back.
And in your budgeting process, do you anticipate getting a check back, or is it maybe kind of found money if we get it?
It's kind of like found money, because you
Okay.
don't want to anticipate getting
I like
that back,
found
because
money.
you never know.
I like found money.
So we budget, essentially, I budget 100,000 for unemployment, and some quarters we pay more than that, and some quarters we pay less. It just depends on how the payroll is. The first quarter is always pretty small, but that December quarter, it's pretty large most of the time, so.
So, speaking of found money,
Yes, ma'am?
do we get any adjustment in ADA from what it was at the tentative budget level?
We did not make any adjustments for that.
Okay, so do we get anything from the state that tells us what our ADA was for 2017-18? Is that on which this year is based?
That's what this is based on, is our end of the year from prior.
Okay,
fiscal
was
year.
that our estimate, or was it an estimate from the state?
That was
That's
the,
theirs, that's what it'd be. I mean,
The
it's
end
not,
of-
when you get to the ADA, it's not an estimate, it's done, it's based on what the
Okay, but,
actual.
well, was there no change after the tentative budget?
there has not been yet. All we have is the forecast seek at this point, which was the April, and that's what this is based on. That's all we have from the state right now.
There'll be,
Okay,
there could be, after the second month, there could be a change.
okay,
in-
so
in
that
some-
could be
some-
found money?
That could be found,
Yes, ma'am.
hopefully it would be an increase, we have an increased enrollment over what we anticipated, and it would be additional money at the end of the second month.
Typically around June, they'll send out the tentative
Yeah.
seek, and that's when we'll get the adjustment.
And we have, every year there's a high attendance day, we're turning into a high attendance week this time, so
Ah,
we're doing some things to increase attendance during that time, so hopefully, and we're doing it prior to end of second month, so it should help.
I'm sorry, I misquoted that. February will be the tentative. I apologize. The
Okay.
final is, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Thank
After that came out, I was like, wait, we're in September. So while we're speaking of Fund 2, I just want to address, we've created a new fund that you all have not seen in the past called Fund 22, District Activity Accounts. And back in 2013, when Red Book came out, KDE allowed every district to just kind of choose what fund they wanted to put it in. They could do Fund 2, Fund 21, or Fund 22 were the options at that time. And Clark County, the finance officer at that time chose to just put them in Fund 2 and not create the new fund. But I have found it for monitoring purposes that it's a bit difficult sometimes to pull a report to tell the difference in your grants and your district activity fund. It kind of all runs together in that special revenue. So this year, starting with July fiscal of this year, we opened up Fund 22 and pulled that district activity money out to have those separate accounts so that we can see the separate monies of just grants and just district activity.
So are these the school activity funds that we see at the end of the audit report?
No,
Okay.
these are,
Those are just internal at the school?
yes, those are
Okay.
only internal. No, there is no munis reporting on that stuff at the moment.
Okay.
All of that is.
They're audited on that.
They're audited on it,
There's
but
no
it's
munis.
completely separate and put in our audit.
Right,
It's
so
not
it
in munis.
doesn't show up
No.
anywhere here?
No, ma'am.
So these district activity accounts are specifically,
They are funds. Red Book states that any monies that are not directly paid on a student activity, if it's for operational or instructional expenses, they have to be sent up to the district level and to a district activity account. So these are, a lot of the accounts are balances from fees, because those were instructional fees that they collected from students and they sent up to house here to then buy instructional materials. GRC has a parking permit. That's an operational thing, so that money comes up here. It's different things like that. They send up money from the library from lost books or something like that to purchase more books. So anything instructional or operational in nature that they want to purchase, they have to send up to the district and use essentially make it into a munis account versus keeping it at the activity level in their school.
so that funding is generated from within the schools?
It is generated from within the school. So you'll see sometimes, one example is Justice. Ms. Hillman has the project leader, the Leader in Me project. So all of that money comes up here. She has a Leader in Me account set up in this district because that's instructional in nature. So anything fundraiser wise that she does for that, the money gets sent up here and housed with us at the district level, and then she does a munis purchase order to purchase whatever
Okay.
she needs for that program.
Rather than in her?
Than rather at
And
the
if
school
it's-
activity level.
If it was fundraised for that, it has to be
Yes.
spent
Yeah.
on that.
Yes.
That's-
Okay, I get it.
I think there was a change in the PSC property tax. I should have looked, but I didn't. Did that tie back to the PSC estimates we had in the tax rate presentation?
Yes, so those were the numbers, based on going down to that 97.23%. I can't talk tonight, I apologize. The 97% collection rate. These are the numbers that would be budgeted from that. Looking at what would have been collected at 100% times that percentage.
Which slide is that?
It's the 10th slide. You'll see all of the
Yes.
general fund tentative versus working.
On the PVA one, I think that's slide 3 or 4, where it says the PVA 1.8 increase, is that for new property?
No, that's total property altogether from what PVA was last year for us to what they submitted this year for total property.
Okay.
New
Not-
and, yeah, it's not just
and
new.
Existing, thank
It
you.
went up 1.8% overall.
And omitted property tax, that estimate went down, and that, I guess, based upon past history.
So I did, on anything that wasn't directly budgeted based on a tax rate, I did a 5-year average, which is the slide prior to the one we were just looking at, slide 9, that shows what the 5-year average was, what we had in the tentative budget, and now the working budget. Because at the draft and tentative level, we didn't have a complete year for that 5th year, so it was the 5-year average at that point when I did the draft budget was over a year ago. So now that we had our 5th year numbers from the 17-18 year ending, I did a new 5-year average, and this is what it,
5th-year rolling average. It
Yes.
rolls up every year.
And was miscellaneous revenue done the same way, or, okay?
Okay, what creates the decrease in the local tax revenue? I'm looking at slide 13. Because if our assessment was up, we're applying the same tax rate, so how is the revenue down?
so we decreased omitted property tax that Mr. Heisel just commented on based
Right.
on the 5-year average. And then what we had in the tentative budget to the working on the PSC property tax, he also commented on a minute ago, actually went down 53,000 based on the 97% collection rate.
Okay, so all of that goes into local tax
Yes, so
revenue.
local is your beginning balance, all the way down to your miscellaneous revenue is all local dollars, is what is
But is
considered
it
local.
all local tax revenue?
No, it's not.
Okay, that's what I'm asking about specifically, is the local tax revenue.
Oh, that part is, yes. Why does it, omitted taxes, so you have general property tax, PSC property tax, delinquent property tax, motor vehicle tax, utilities tax, omitted property tax, revenue in lieu of taxes for your local source. All of that is the local tax revenue.
Okay. So what's other local revenue?
Other local revenue is, let me find that real quick, where we've got that. Look at this report. So your other local revenue sources are, we have a lease with Sprint for a tower out on, what is the property that's on? I'm not sure. We bring in 84,000 with the lease there. And then we have bus rental, we've got a budget of 125, and then our miscellaneous 305. So that's your 514,000, or those 3 categories for other local revenue. And that slide is, I think the one you're looking at that's showing the decrease in local tax, it's actually comparing how we ended this past fiscal year to the working budget. If you flip to the next slide, it's the tentative versus the working. So there's one slide on most of it that's got 2 years of actual numbers against the working budget, and then another slide with tentative versus working. There's 2 different types of comparisons there.
Okay, I'm on the general fund local revenues slide, number 13.
So 14.
Okay, yes, okay, I see.
I was gonna say, next time I need to number my slides, it's flipping through here. My paperwork doesn't have it numbered.
So on our tentative, we based that on the 62.2 cents per hundred, right?
With
Okay.
a 2% increase in our property. So we were estimating our property was gonna go up more than it did. So,
Okay,
and then we actually came in at the 1.8. So that's
Okay.
why there's a
Okay.
bit of a variance
Okay.
between the two, is because the property values.
okay.
And of course, the big part is the other line. I had the funny feeling there's some unique things in there that, from past actuals that,
Oh, in the act from the year end to,
yeah, you know, that's the one that stands out. It's the last
Yeah.
one, the other local revenue.
so prior year on the other, you've got, let's see, one. Okay, so part of that prior year, which has since been an audit adjustment, is that ICS money where we were hitting the miscellaneous revenue account at the change of the months.
That's what it is.
I talked that out with the auditor since it seemed to be such a confusing issue on our miscellaneous revenue account that it was going back and forth every month, of a better way to do that than we were doing it. And although they said how I was doing it was one option, a better way is just to create a second cash account and hit the cash account. So on the statement you all would have seen just last Tuesday, you would have seen another, on the balance sheet, 2 cash accounts on our general fund. And one was negative, and that's because of that IC month switch thing. So now we're gonna be hitting the cash back and forth instead of hitting a revenue account to confuse the matter of what the true revenue number is. So that's already been an adjustment on the sheet that you've seen, because the auditors already gave me that adjustment to do compared to what the tentative budget was showing.
Yeah, I think
And the
that
actual
probably
number.
explains the biggest part of why
Yeah.
the other was, it was artificially
Yes.
high, because it was oddball.
So I was doing this number, actual revenue, based on our unaudited AFR, which was submitted to the state with that number in it. So that's why I left that number the way it is. But if you're looking at the new working budget and you're looking at last year's actuals, you'll see that number's already gone down. And the difference is that insured cash sweep number. So it really, our revenues in the other area for last year was right at the 514,000 that we're actually budgeting for this year.
The 6, you're still studying? Do you have
I
additional?
think I'm finished with the revenue part.
Okay.
Except for food services generally. But does food service have a working budget?
That, I mean, it's part of our budget, Fund 51.
Okay, well, when we get in the food service section, it's called draft budget on slide.
Oh, I copied
39 or
the,
so.
nothing had, I'm sorry, that was a failure to change. I copied the slides from draft, so that needs to say working.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing changed on their information except for their beginning balance, just how they ended the year. The beginning balance is all that changed for the bottom dollar amount, so I had just copied their information over and adjusted that, so I apologize for not catching that that's a draft still. Thank you for that catch.
Yes, ma'am.
In what are your, in the budget presentation, there were several lines about move from org 0011-052 to 000-1118. What was that?
So, in the past here, and that's our instructional budgets, and one is like improvement instruction, and one is district-wide instruction. And so, Miss Brenda Considine, who is over curriculum, she had like 6 budgets. And so last year we sat down and she just said, can I combine all these into my district-wide instruction so I only have one budget to keep up with versus multiple org codes? So we did that, but in the budgeting process, there was one that got stuck out and it missed. There's a lot of lines when you look at the budget presentation in Munis of what I have to move around. And that one got left off. So when she sat down with me again this year to review at the beginning of the school year of what her monies were, we realized she still had 2 budgets and she wanted the one budget. So we moved it all into her 1118 from that 1052.
So it's the 1118 improvement of instruction or district-wide instruction?
District-wide instruction.
Okay. So there is no improvement of instruction?
It's all in district-wide now.
I'm not sure you want to agree to that statement itself. We're talking about a budget line.
Budget line.
You don't
It's all
want,
in.
there's improvement in
There is
improvement.
still an improvement. It's just being paid for out of district-wide instruction budget.
And I'm showing them, once I added all those together, it's like $10,000. Is that
Yes.
pass your smell test?
Yeah. I've tried to simplify it as much as I could since I've been here, just for ease of everybody's understanding.
129 pages didn't seem to be simple.
I know.
I just-
It's
But
it's
thank
not.
you.
Munis is not simple, unfortunately. I've tried my best to be as simplistic as possible, but it is difficult. Munis is not a friendly program.
Look forward to the day we have to export that to Excel. What an exciting day that will be for me.
Yes, it is. That is the only document that will not export to Excel. Makes no sense. I've even called Munis on it, and it's because it's a specially generated report for the state of Kentucky versus a Munis created report. There's different parameters of how they wrote the report. Because we have some reports that are specific for the state of Kentucky for our education department in reporting.
I mean, like the 100 and some page budget, you can't export that to Excel, right? Okay.
No.
Well, back in the day when Munis was first developed, you know, there were all the predictions about how long it would last because it was not Excel friendly.
Yeah, it is. It's a difficult program, and I love Excel, even though sometimes like I said, I fat finger stuff. But so I try to dump as much as I can in Excel as possible. But there's a lot of things I wish I could that I can't. So it's frustrating sometimes. Yeah, I'm afraid Munis is not going anywhere at this point.
You know, we kicked around the idea of trying to buy their additional module for to help in payroll budgeting. It's still something to look at,
Yes, that is
since what you have to do on that is so incredibly cumbersome,
yes.
and it's such an incredibly important number.
Mhm.
Still might be something to look forward to when we get into next year.
Yeah, we can investigate that.
I don't think I would ever go into anything Munis expecting it to be easy or.
No.
They're here to help.
On the grants, can we go back to the grants just for a second?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that 25? I can't find it. Preschool grant, I guess it's 24. Did we get the preschool grant that we had applied for?
Head
Or
Start?
was that Head Start? or
That's
was
not-
it
No,
not
something
that
else?
is not what that money is. This 50,000 for Head Start is a transportation reimbursement that, John, I don't know.
We're
Is-
doing some transportation for Kentucky River Foothills, transporting their preschoolers.
Okay.
That's a reimbursement for transportation. With that grant's not been
They still haven't
decided yet.
decided.
It's not.
The one for back in the summer that's still
Yeah,
undecided?
yeah,
They
they're
keep
gonna do it
putting
30
it off.
days. They keep putting it off.
Oh, I was very excited.
Well,
that
we're
it-
still excited about it.
That'll be over $1 million hopefully if we
Okay.
get
We did
that
get
right.
a- we
I
did
was
get
expecting
another,
it to be more,
Yes.
you know, well,
Yes, we-
we'll
50,000.
have some information for you at the next board meeting. We did pick up another preschool grant, about
Yes.
300,000, so we're gonna be able to extend preschool year already without the other thing
Yeah.
we're talking about.
So does that show you?
It is
No,
not
it's
on
not-
here.
It's not come in yet. It's not
I
there yet.
literally just found out on
Yeah.
Monday, and I had already submitted everything. But we got a partnership grant for almost 300,000 from the state
Great.
that was written for. So we're very excited about that.
But we've not gotten any money or
But
anything,
no-
so it doesn't show in here yet.
Yeah, it's not showing in here yet. We haven't set up the budget for that yet.
But we're hopeful that the other one, if we do, it's gonna be more in the tune of 1 to 1.5 million, which would greatly reduce the
Yes.
board's input into preschool. And would free up a whole bunch of money that you're putting into preschool for some other things.
And it was, will it be a multi-year?
Yes. Yes, it would be ours forever until we,
Till they ask to have it rewritten again.
well, until somebody messes up. and then do that. Clock's falling down on the downside now.
Not a meeting of
Speeding up.
You want to explain the GIS payment, because it keeps bouncing around, so.
So in February, you all agreed to pay for that program again.
Uh-huh.
Our partnership there. And it simply, I walked out of the board meeting in February and didn't give another thought till the invoice hit my desk last month, and it was not in the budget.
Okay, so
So
they,
that-
they didn't invoice it prior to then, and
No.
they normally invoice it in the
Because it was
fall.
for this physical year, it's for the 18-19 physical year. So they invoiced it last month, in August, and I simply missed putting that in the May budget, so I apologize for that. It was board approved and it should have been in the tentative budget in May, but when I sat down and did the revisions in May, it just was not a thought in my head. I didn't put a note in the proper place to catch that, so.
Okay, what about the Medicaid fund?
That, so part of the problem with the Medicaid is when we originally set up Medicaid budgets, they needed to be set up in a fashion that would report on our, I just left the MOE, my brain just went blank, what's that called?
On the application?
No, what's the, maintenance and physical effort,
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
for special
Yeah.
education, I apologize, that just went out of my brain. So we have a maintenance and physical effort report that we have to turn in yearly for our physical effort towards special education. And Medicaid is part of that, and the original codes that were set up for the Medicaid budget last year were not pulling into that report, so I had to go change those org codes for this budget. And when I deleted all the budgets out for the previous Medicaid code, I did not get all the budgets put back in on the new code. So that was also a mishap on my part. I got all the nurses' salary, that 1 hour that you all agreed for them to pay, because that was in the salary Excel file, that budget code, but in finishing out that 250 that we had budgeted last year as a straight expense budget towards the 250 we have budgeted on the revenue side, it didn't get done.
So is that what this will be this year as well?
Yes.
Because it's on the revenue side.
Yes, we have 250 on the revenue side, and at the tentative level, all we had was about 55,000 for, or whatever the difference of 250 and 184 is. My brain is a little number crazy right now. For the nurses, and then our half Medicaid paid person who takes care of Medicaid overall for the district for us was all that got budgeted. So only the payroll side got budgeted, not all the additional for expenses. So the 184 is what rounds out the expense budget to the 250.
I don't follow, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
Okay, on the revenue side,
we have
it's showing
250,000.
250,000.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're not showing anything on the expense
We
side.
are now, we have 250,000 now in this working budget for Medicaid. It
Okay,
falls,
so where is it?
it's not gonna be a straight Medicaid line like your
Oh,
revenue, it's in one of
purchase
those
Professional
functions.
services or some such?
Yes.
Okay,
It's mixed in one of
Okay.
the functions of student support.
okay. I
Yeah,
could not
it's
find
not a straight, here's your Medicaid 250, it's mixed in those codes.
it. Okay.
Yeah, there's multiple orgs for your nurses, your Medicaid person, and then,
So in the tentative budget, it was only in the revenue side?
it was, 250 was on the revenue side and about 66,000 was on the expense side in the
That was also
in
in
salary.
one of
Mixed in,
those.
yes.
Okay,
Because your nurses fall under the function of student support, and so you would, it's in the salary codes under that student support function. So now there's 250,000 under the student support that equals to that revenue side, but you're not gonna see it pulled out specifically unless I do a separate report for just that organizational code.
In the information you gave us at the budget meeting, it's 4 areas, the total of the 184,000. 349. I'm giving you the last 3 digits, 349, 580, 610, and 651.
So 651 is the technology stuff, and that's where the technology items will be purchased from. So there's IEPs of students that specifically say that they need an iPad or some kind of device, so that's what it would be purchased from.
Adaptive devices. It may even include, besides the technology component, there are the adaptive devices that might, say if you have a child that needs a stander in order that they can learn how to manipulate standing for instructional purposes. And then there's also the component of other materials that would be relevant for their IEP development.
So the 0651 is the technology side. I'm sorry, what were the other codes?
So working backwards, then 610, I guess that's general
So
supplies.
general supplies, so an item like she just stated would be like the stander or whatever would be.
580.
580 is travel. So also out of the Medicaid budget this year, which has typically come out of general fund special ed in the past until we started this Medicaid, is our OT and PT services contracted. We're now paying for that, which is the 0349 you stated, and 580, the contracted service and travel of those 2 people.
Yeah, so the 349 is,
Contracted services.
Okay.
For professional services.
did you want the totals for each one of those, Ms. Hicks?
please.
Okay. Let me finish this here. So the 349, that's $69,000. The 580 is $20,000. 610 is $20,633. And 651 is $75,000. And you add those 4 up and you get to $184,633.
I did not color code mine, so it is difficult to pull the numbers out of how tiny that's printed.
Yeah, I had a hard time.
Well, I didn't know where to look. But now I do. Thank you. I'm not even sure where this is, I don't have but this interfund transfer and indirect cost transfers,
Mhm.
where do we find those in the monthly budget reports?
You'll find them on the monthly financial statement that is provided.
Okay.
You'll see on the revenue
But
side.
what, well,
They're-
let me
they're-
back up a little bit.
Okay.
what is included there? What sort of items make up those totals when I see that item in the,
So the indirect cost is the number that comes from food service. That's all
Okay.
that would be in the indirect cost is what's transferred from food service to
Okay.
Fund One. The trans.
And before you leave that, and.
Yes, we
and
need
this
to
is a-
touch on that as
And
well.
as a reminder, that was one of the changes between
Yes.
the tentative and the working, is that $45,000 because of the change we made back
So
in.
due to the payroll
back in
change
summer.
increase, we went back and ran the numbers based on their staffing level and the salary of the increase of the 4%. And, because they base that on their salary, so they take what they pay out salaries and benefits times the percentage rate that you all approved. And food service came back to us and said, no, I think it's more like 141,000 now that we've moved our staff around and hired some new people. And we had taken it down to 105. So at the draft level, we said it was 150. And then we discussed, when we approved the rate for the indirect cost, we said that would be more like a budget of 105,000, which is in my report that we talked about August 13th at the committee meeting, but had not officially been changed in, it got changed to 140, what was it? 141,000. So we really only went down 9,000 from the tentative to the working versus what we originally thought would be a 45,000 decrease to our budget in indirect costs due to looking at those salary numbers again.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but since we were
No.
already on that subject. I thought-
No, no,
okay,
I'm
so
glad
that's,
you did.
Good time
that's
to talk
this
about it.
other receipts on general fund revenues tentative versus working budget on slide number 12 or 11, depending.
Yes, that went, yeah, well, indirect cost, other receipts. Yes, other
Okay.
receipts.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So other receipts also includes transfers, and those are transfers that would have come on the revenue side into Fund One, which last year you had 370 from capital funds that you all did a capital funds request approval on. So that's what that number's made up of, is the indirect cost and capital funds for the actual numbers last year on the revenue side.
You put a lot of things down in community services. And
Yes,
Is that the PO encumbrances?
Community services is an area that was never used by our district, and when you all requested to see direct how your contingency monies are being spent, that's the function we put it in. So anything listed in community service is something that you have done a board-approved item on, and we've moved out of contingency.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe
Okay.
I misunderstood.
Did
I
not
thought it
think
was a carryover from last, I thought it was
Some of
timely
the monies
carryovers
in
from
there
last year.
would be carryovers that you approved last fiscal year. We created a purchase order on that didn't get paid, and it did a PO encumbrance carry forward into this year's budget.
Okay, yeah, that's.
So
what I
some of
think.
them are, but typically that function's gonna be what I transfer out of contingency and into there.
But for the budget we're looking at right now,
Yes,
that,
those would be PO encumbrance carry
Okay,
forwards.
yeah.
That you approved last fiscal year and hadn't been paid yet.
and that's one of the reasons why we rolled into this year with a higher beginning balance. And so
Yeah,
those two
they kind
oddball
of
things, you
balance
can
each other
offset
out,
them. Yeah,
yes.
that's what I was thinking on it
Yeah.
also.
Yes, sir.
Which, from my opinion, I think was a much better way to handle it than commingling it in all the regular stuff, because then you didn't know, wow, supplies are really up. Well, actually, part of it was that, so I appreciate you moving it down there. I can just remember.
That was
So
actually a
these-
Dr. Bob's suggestion of how to help us keep that straight, so.
So on the slide about, on the expenses slide, adjustments from tentative, are all of those items community services since they came from contingency?
Not all of them, no. So.
Okay, workers' comp wouldn't be.
So workers' comp's not, that's actually in your board budget. The PO encumbrance carry forwards went into whatever category they were encumbered under. So if there was an instructional PO encumbered that didn't get paid, it got pulled over and is in the function 100 instruction.
Okay.
Medicaid is not, because we have a separate code for that, and that's just a budgeted. So, but all the other items, the 32,000 for GIS, the new ATC position you approved, and materials for 29,000, those two items would be in the community service. Now, the next two items, your carry forward for your SBDM and your Section 6 money, those are gonna actually be in their allocation budgets, the instructional codes. Because that's giving it to the school to spend.
And likewise for the departmental budget moves.
So departmental budget moves, yes, are within their own org codes. Yes, ma'am. So essentially in community service, there will never be anything that wasn't a board-approved contingency item, but it doesn't mean that necessarily every single contingency item you approve goes into that category, because sometimes they have to go into other
Right, if
organizations.
it doesn't fit in another
Yes.
category or for instruction or whatever.
Yes, ma'am.
Orange head, if it rains anytime, so.
Out of nothing, I don't know what it means, so I don't know what the question relates to. Property/supplies, and it's under community services, so it's probably included in the discussion we just had.
Yes, so.
Because most of those items were listed as property or supplies. Okay.
And a lot of those items are the security things that we've been doing
Right.
this summer. We're not complete with those projects, so those POs got carried forward because they haven't been paid yet.
On the budget summary for, does the contingency amount include all the things that are mentioned in the expenses in the presentation slides?
As far as the adjustments from tentative,
Yes, yes.
those have already all been pulled out of contingency.
Okay, so they are, so that the contingency is current as of right now?
Yes, ma'am.
With the Medicaid and the GIS and all that already taken out?
Yes, ma'am.
All the roads open this morning for buses? Guess we get pretty good drainage last night.
Yeah,
Guess we'll see it again.
yeah.
To back up about your way, Ashley? The roads?
It stands on my road. There's one area where I send them pictures. I got a notification on my phone where there was a couple of roads closed last night. I guess they opened them before this morning.
I can believe Old Williamsburg had drained last night too. This morning.
Oh, we had that long break. I mean, it kind of quit and where they didn't think it would, but this isn't supposed to quit, is it?
If this keeps on, will this mess you up getting home?
Yeah. You know that dip, where that creek runs out, it just stands.
Do you have any more questions,
I do
Mrs.
not.
Hicks? Ms. Ritchie, any questions? Mr. Peridot? Any concerns, Ms. Elkins?
Not a one.
Anything you want to share with us, Superintendent Christie? All right. I don't want to miss anybody here. Well, it seems like we have all the questions answered. You were going to, when we get to the motion part, probably make sure we clarify what that adjustment
The
is.
20,000 to be moved from SEEP to National Board Certification.
That's on the revenue side.
On the revenue side, yes.
And I think we've ironed out and gotten all the other questions answered. And so this is the last stage of the process for this year.
Yes.
And presuming we get a motion to approve this with those adjustments, you'll send that on.
Start.
And you can
The first
anticipate
phase of the next
waiting
year.
for January to get here.
We'll start that process next month, actually, so never-ending cycle.
Okay. Well, if there's no further questions, we'll probably then bring discussion to a close, and it would be a good time for a motion then. All righty, I'll give a stab at it then. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the 2018-2019 working budget as has been presented and in our packets, with the adjustment moving $20,000 from SEEK revenues to National Board Certification revenues.
Second.
Second, Ms. Ritchie? Okay, motion by myself, second by Ms. Ritchie. Any further discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes 4-0. Sadly, we don't have anything else on our agenda, so it would be time for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Ms. Ritchie,
Second.
second by Mrs. Hicks. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes 4-0. So our fun of seeing each other every week for 3 weeks has now come to a close.
Cattle safely home.